2020 doesn't need much coverage, I suppose. Pretty rubbish year across the board for lots of reasons. As is relevant for the fitness industry, I guess it accelerated a trend that was already happening. As I said, for those of you who don't know who we are, we've been in the online fitness world for quite a while. We officially started in 2010, although we were messing around with it for a while. So like our first paid client was 2012. So we've been doing this for quite some time, and we've seen things kind of expand, accelerate over that time. But for obvious reasons, 2020 accelerated that. So a lot of trainers were forced online. A lot of people experienced some extremely negative consequences. And a lot of consumers were forced to seek online alternatives. I think for the first time ever in the history of us coaching online, we literally had clients reach out and say, I can't work with my personal trainer anymore. I can't work offline. I can't access the service I'd like to. I'd like to consider an online alternative. All right, so first time that's ever happened, obviously. Right, so that combined with what was already a trend. So this is a stat I've quoted before, but from 2019, Allied Market Research basically predict about a 33% growth in the value of the virtual fitness market between 2019 and 2027. Okay, so from 6 billion to 59 billion, pretty big. Anything in billions is normally pretty big. And I guess that what that's allowed, or what that's creating, is this scenario, which a lot of you, by the sounds of things, are already benefiting from, where online trainers can provide this cheaper, competitive service because there's a smaller cost base, there's no fixed costs, there's no rent, there's no travel. It means you can price lower, but actually make more profit, work with more clients. So basically, the combination of these things means that there is, in theory, technically, if you were to map out, like, since online training has existed, this is about the best time to start, in theory. And why listen to us? This is us. That's me on the right. That's Yusuf on the left. That's our fitness business, PropaneFitness. Why listen? Well, I guess something I believe in. We did a podcast on this fairly recently, where I think it's quite hard to teach something if you've not at least had a go at it yourself. Right? There's some nuances to it that exist only in practice that you can't really read about in books. So we can only really teach what we've done ourselves, and this is something that I like to think we've done ourselves, right? And we are still very much doing. So this is PropaneFitness. That's our podcast. That's just the standard. You got to screenshot your Stripe account, right? Otherwise, it's not real. Those are some of our products. That's our website. We've been featured in menshealthmatch.com, PTDC, Healthy Living, Heavy Lifting, Elite FTS, etc. And that's one of our products, is the website's kind of the subdomains, the Propane protocol as well. And oops, I can just get back to actually select the next slide. We arrived at basically, I think, what's most important strategy that lasted. So a lot of the stuff that I see promoted by some of the people who are newer to the market is very kind of flash in the pan, make as much money as you can in 6 months, and then not really think about the long term. And I think when we're coaching our clients on this stuff, I'm so heavy-handed on, you don't want this to last to the end of this year. You want this to still be running and growing in 5 years' time, ideally, right? It's not about the big month of business or the big quarter of business. It's about the big years and the big 1 year and the big 3, 4, 5 year growth trajectory. That's, I think, really what's most important. And we get this question a lot, and it's a fair question. And I think you should ask it for everybody who's doing this, right? Why are we doing business mentoring? There's a few reasons. Obviously, it's like another service line we can offer. It's part of the business. I think if you've got expertise and experience, no reason why you can't package and offer it to clients. Secondly, we do get asked for it quite a bit. I think because we attract a certain type of personal trainer to, like, the fitness podcast, because we interview people like Eric Helms and Mano Hanselmans and Greg Knuckles and stuff like that. We have a lot of clients in the fitness business who are personal trainers. I coach personally one-to-one some PTs on their fitness and nutrition. So it was a natural kind of evolution. But yeah, mainly that we get asked for it. And I think as well, maybe wrongly, but I feel like we have something a little bit different to offer. We're very anti a lot of the stuff that exists, and you'll hear me kind of criticizing that in a moment. But we're basically just saying, look, there's enough in this market for everybody. There are literally billions of people in the online fitness market. So we're just going to show you behind the scenes of what we do. And this stuff kind of started. So we were interviewed by Suk at Online Fitness Business on his podcast back in 2017. And around that sort of time, was shortly after we'd both left the finance world. So we both used to work in accounting and banking. We'd left that, moved into this. We were doing it full time. Everyone's like, whoa, like, you guys have got like 3,000 Instagram followers. How are you managing that? So we started getting some questions for those reasons. the program that now that's moved into is called PropaneFitness, and we've had way more way more results than I think either of us ever really expected. So for over 400 graduates, people who've been through and completed the program since we launched it. So sadly, though, we're not overnight seven-figure fit pros. I wish we were. Actually, the bulk of the work, the bulk of the growth of the business has taken over 8 years. So from 2012, our first sale processed through PayPal, still got the screenshot of a £9.99 one-to-one. It was actually 2-to-1 because they worked with both Yusuf and myself on fitness coaching, all the way through to 2020, where actually we do fewer things. We have kind of like one funnel, one product really that we promote. We have the other side things, but like one focus. We have a team now who help us do this stuff, and the revenue scaled to the point where it's kind of, it's a relatively comfortable living for myself, for Yusuf, and then the team that work with us. So it is possible, right? I don't want you to sit there thinking like, oh my God, I need to plan out 8 years rather than just 2021. That's not what I'm saying. It is possible to do this in far less time, because it's not like from the first transaction of £9.99, we made all the right decisions. We didn't. But like in this land of 90-day push to be a six-figure fit pro, I feel like I have to say, look, the reality of this is it's difficult. It's hard. It comes with a lot of challenges. And I guess the first challenge of which is, if your goal is six-figure fit pro this year, right, or whatever that means, if your goal is to earn a certain revenue amount, okay, at some point, this has to be your undivided full-time focus. Okay, if the goal is $100,000, pounds, whatever, a year, that can't just be done really on weekends and evenings unless you're doing something extremely automated. And frankly, I don't think that's really the way to go. If you want to offer a coaching business, offering a service at a reasonable level of scale, and you want it to be at that level, you're going to have to be doing it full time. Okay, so there's kind of a step in between, which is where you're at now, and either kind of pre-COVID, whatever your offline coaching business was generating, and some of you may already be at this, right? But either matching your offline income with what it used to be, what it is now, or basically getting your online business to the point where it is consistently, predictably generating like 2, 3, 4, 5 grand a month every single month. Okay. Now I realize that I'm moving into like sitting on the beach, not doing anything. That's not what I mean. I'm not saying it's an automated, you don't have to work for it, but you want predictability and reliability in what you're building. And if it's very up and down, if it's very feast and famine, it's very hard to just live a happy lifestyle with that worry going on in the background all the time. Okay, so this part specifically is the kind of the most poignant part of our business development between 2012 and 2016. 2012 being kind of the first client, and 2016 where we both left the finance world, right? So this 4-year window was between basically first transaction where kind of people started paying us for coaching, all the way through to kind of passing the VAT threshold, leaving the finance world, doing this full time. And we developed a lot of systems in that time. But basically, I suppose what we do is we take the stuff that we kind of figured out in that, what we do in PropaneFitness, we condense that and compress that into 4 13-week chunks with people and look at a 1-year timeline. Okay. So your 1-year timeline, and what I would encourage everybody to look at this year, is start with the easiest target is start with what was I doing offline, right? And if it's past that, pick something similarly reasonable, right? So just for my context, is anybody currently at the point or beyond with their online what they were doing offline? Give me a 1 if you're not there. Give me a 1 if this is kind of a target for you, where like matching online and offline would be a pretty big. Okay, perfect. So we take your offline personal trainer, whatever you were generating, and I'm just using sample numbers just to keep this simple. Okay, so we say 35 hours a week. I realize, obviously, depending on where you are in the world, this isn't possible. Gyms are closed. But 35 hours a week at £25 an hour, roughly speaking, 3,500 a month pre-tax and pre-other stuff. Okay, about 140 hours a month. So if we're looking to online to offline match, okay, and this is slightly different because I'm going to introduce a hybrid way of doing this. But if we have, let's say we get to the point where we have 35 online clients paying this kind of mid-ticket price of £100 a month, right? I'll cover why we cover that in a second. And let's say you keep the 10 people you love working with, right? I think everyone's got the clients they work with for free, Everyone's got the clients that they love working with, that show up on time, that pay on time, all that sort of stuff. So let's say you keep working with them, but you kind of up your rate a little bit because there's the pressure's been taken off, right? You don't have to charge £25 an hour. Now you can charge £35 an hour, assuming your offline facility or however you structure your offline allows that. So now you're doing 4,900 pre-tax and obviously pre-fees and all these other sorts of things, but with a better lifestyle. And I think the key thing here is just going back to those numbers. If you take that, right, take that as a goal, most people I speak to, like pretty much every personal trainer I speak to, actually, that will be a massive, massive life altering shift in the quality of how things work for them. Fewer commutes, fewer 5 a.m. starts, assuming things have gone back to normal, fewer 10 p.m. finishes. You kind of say to yourself, I'm not going to work Fridays, Saturdays, or Sundays anymore. I'm going to use the online aspect of what I'm doing to take the pressure off of the offline, right? And I don't know why this stuff's never spoken about, and everyone jumps to the 30 grand a month thing, because there are downsides of doing 30 grand a month, right? That is, the bigger the business is in any way, the more stuff there is to do and the more stress there is to it. Why not just talk about step one? Before you get there, talk about step one, which is take the pressure off your offline business, generate some flexibility, generate a more stable, more predictable, more forecastable online aspect to your business. That's basically our proposal for a goal and how to kind of reverse engineer it back. Okay, so you need 35 in that example, more or less, people. Now that number may be different for you. Maybe it's a lower number, maybe it's a bigger number. From 2 billion, right? And that's just people on Facebook. Think what you want about Facebook. There's a lot of people on there. Okay, so forget 6 figures. Just consider that as a goal. So these are the kind of the real benefits, as we see it anyway, of online coaching done properly, taking the kind of the fanfare and the big numbers and the Lamborghinis out of it. Takes the pressure away from the offline schedule, creates more freedom of where you work, who you work with, where you work. It can either be the living room or Bali, whatever floats your boat. You start to think about helping thousands of people, either directly with your program or with people who come through your sales funnels and enjoy the content and go through your, listen to your podcast or whatever it is you do in the future, right? Rather than hundreds of people or your local town. You start to really expand the people you can help with what it is that you're doing, because this is at the point where it's allowing you to live off it. The phrase that we use, which is get paid for your recipes rather than hours at the stove. And what I mean by that is, rather than getting paid for an hour of your time in the gym, helping someone set up their session, watching someone squat, making sure someone's not going to get injured, the stuff in your head that you use in those sessions to get the people those results, suddenly that's helping hundreds of people at once, thousands of people at once, in programs that can be accessed around the world, right? So you get paid for the knowledge and the information rather than the time, which is a big distinction. And crucially, I think, especially this last calendar year, income doesn't stop when you or your clients suddenly can't get to the gym, right? All of our clients, I don't know whether any of you follow us on Instagram, but we just released a free, we released basically one of our bodyweight programs that all our clients have as standard on Instagram. For anybody who's followed us for a while and kind of fancied doing something, all of our 5,500 followers. Tons of our clients have to do bodyweight programming anyway. Tons of our clients have to work out from home anyway, because they are basically busy professionals, essentially. They do a lot of traveling with hotels and stuff like that. So, it didn't really affect things. If anything, we started to have some inquiries from people who previously worked offline. So that's one of the benefits of being online, is that you can just pivot really quickly. You don't have to worry about the doors actually physically being shut so you can't access your clients. Obviously, you have higher profit margins, no kit, no rent, no travel required. Your income doesn't stop when gyms close in your local town, etc. So to achieve that in 2021, there are basically five kind of problems or 5 questions to answer. Some of you will know all of these. Some of you will know some of them. It may be a question mark for all of you, but hopefully what you're sat there with, fingers crossed, or you'll at least have the idea of how to get that after you finish watching the presentation, is you now kind of have this target of like, okay, I've got this number that I'm going to shoot for. We generally recommend £100 a month. I'm going to cover pricing in a second. So just take the 3,000, 2,000, divide it by that. You'll get 20, 30, 40 clients, for example. That's your target. And then we're going to reverse engineer that and say, well, who is that person? How much we're going to charge them? How do we actually get them, right? How do we coach them, get them as a client, not get them and capture them, get them as a client. And then once we've got a few of them, how do we get all the way up to the point where we hit the target? Okay, that's the sequence that we need to solve. So the first problem is who on earth do you work with, right? If there are 2 billion people that you could work with, how do you pick one? Well, the problem, I guess, as a fit pro looking at Instagram, looking at Facebook, looking at any of these platforms, is it seems so crowded, right? It seems like everybody, especially when gym shut earlier in 2020, it seems like everybody was just posting free workouts, free live sessions, free follow along training, right? If you're in the UK, you'll have seen Joe Wicks is literally posting free follow along workouts for people to do. So it seems so busy, the market, right? It seems like, well, how can I possibly compete with that? And we see big names in the industry and they're going after general population, broad markets. So we copy them, right? But then the imposter syndrome kicks in. We're like, oh yeah, but I'm not as qualified as them, or I don't have a PhD in protein synthesis like that guy. I can't possibly do that. I can't possibly charge that. Then we're met with the counter example to that, which is a business guru telling us that we need to niche down with people who are between the age of 35 and 36, who work at this place, who live in this part of the world, right? And then it basically feeds in and of itself. And niche target market ends up becoming something that, even though it's really simple, something that we all overthink, that we all kind of have an idea of it, and then we question ourselves, and then we think we know who we're going to work with, and then we don't. It keeps going around in circles. And you often start with your offline niche, right? And you think, oh, well, but if I just niche down to this person, then what about all the other people I normally work with? And offline, I work with this sort of person, this sort of person, this sort of person. What about, and that they're a really good client. What about them? And most personal trainers offline have 3 to 4 different types of market they work with, and they don't want to lose them. And it makes sense, right? Because offline, you don't have to niche down, or rather, you don't have the luxury of being able to niche down because it's people living within a radius that you could work with. You have to pick from them. You can't decide you're going to work with people who want to be in the NFL if no one in your local town wants to be in the NFL. You're going to run into some problems. Okay. So we like to think of this as forget about the person and instead focus on the problem. All right. And the example I always give is people will sometimes say to me when they join PropaneFitness, Johnny, I want to work with busy professionals. And the example I give is most of my friends are busy professionals, right? They work in, most of them still in accountancy. Okay. And in that group of friends, there's a guy who deadlifts 280 kilos and there's a guy who's never been in the gym before. Both of them are busy professionals. The program, the coaching, the problems, the help that they need are so different. It's not even, they couldn't even be in the same program, right? So if you try to niche by a person or by the kind of the demographic, you end up still kind of blocked at what you're actually going to do. And if you try to serve everybody, you end up serving no one. Imagine trying to make a program for those 2 people. It would just be the weirdest thing, right? At one hand, you're explaining to the guy who deadlifts 280 kilos how to warm up for a deadlift session. And on the other hand, you're explaining to someone, you're giving someone else undulating periodization who's never been in the gym before. Okay. So if we niche by the problem, we start getting a bit more specific and we start to be able to basically win this attention war. And if you think of it really simply, your target market, whoever that is, they're sat watching Netflix, they're sat doing something else, scrolling through social media, and you've got a couple of seconds to get their attention. And everyone else is trying to get their attention. So take what I just mentioned as an example, right? Someone who has never been in the gym before, they're a busy professional, they don't think they can fit it in, and they're scrolling through social media, and on that feed is like men's health, for example, just to think of a very broad thing. Men's health, or like sort of fitness influencer, someone off the cover of Men's Health trying to sell them an 8-week abs program, right? But they're also trying to sell it to every other guy in their 30s, right? Whereas I am just trying to sell to the guy who's never been in the gym before, who works in finance. Why am I going to win that? Because I'm pretty sure I know what it's like to be him. Doesn't mean I have to have been him specifically, but I kind of know what the problems are. So I know a bit more about him than the Men's Health model trying to sell the 8-week program to everybody. And so I'm a bit more likely to be able to create this effect of like, wow, like that guy's read my mind, right? We've all had that before with marketing where you see something and you're like, yeah, that's me, right? And before you know, you clicked it and you've bought something, right? That's really how customers make decisions. You've got their attention because it's like, okay, that's me. I understand. It seems like they understand what it's like to be me, right? So thinking about the problem rather than the person allows you to just know a bit more about the customer than the other person, than the other coach, than the other brand, than the other business. And what's more, if you help someone that's kind of naturally sees you as the expert, help someone who's maybe a few chapters behind you in the same journey, you naturally feel more comfortable helping them, right? The example I give is, if you could meet yourself 2 years ago and help them with their diet and training, do you reckon you'd be able to help? Probably. Do you reckon you could make the 2 years go quicker? Probably. Right? We had this when we started doing giving out like business help to personal trainers. I felt like, well, how can we possibly do that? We don't, we've only been in business like 5-6 years. There are, business consultants are in business for 20-30 years. But then you think, well, that 4 years example, could I make that 4 years into one? Yes, absolutely. Right. So then you start feeling like, okay, actually, as a coach, I can really add value here to somebody. The solution and what you get as a result of this is something that's just stacked on top of one another. So the marketing becomes better and better because it's just the same person over and over again. You're trying to get the same person over and over again. Things that your market say to you, you put back into your marketing. Your sales funnel starts converting better over time because you can tweak it and adapt it. Your program becomes more and more refined and more adapted to one sort of person going after one sort of result. And you find the commonalities in your market as they're coming through your program. And over time, actually, you end up having to spend less time coaching because you're building resources and building systems to help the same person go through the same process, like a recipe, right? You're putting the ingredients in, you know the recipe and how it works, and you know the end result with reasonable reliability. So there's just something to think about. If you don't know who your niche is, who are you one chapter ahead of or 2 chapters ahead of, right? Where were you 2-3 years ago, for example? Could you help that person? So here's just 2 examples of, or maybe 3 examples actually, of people who originally thought they were going to do one thing and then ended up doing something else, right? So Ryan, when he first came to us, he'd been in powerlifting for a little while. He was still fairly new to the sport, right? But he'd been in powerlifting for a little while, and he had this thing of like, well, I can't help powerlifters because I'm not Ed Cohen, right? I can't squat 1,000 pounds. So who am I to coach powerlifters? So he started going after the like busy mums niche, right? As I think everybody does when they first start thinking about this. And basically what we encouraged him to do was think about it in this way, that, if he could help himself when he first started powerlifting, if he could help himself get to the grips with, what's the first competition like and the nerves, and actually he could relate to someone better who's just starting out than the coach who's been doing it for 20 years. It's quite recent for him, right? So he's then built this business up to the point where it is a full-time thing for him, which is pretty cool. It's called Project Barbell. Nate worked in CrossFit gyms, worked in various different parts of the fitness industry. Originally had the thought of like, I'm just going to do fat loss coaching, muscle gain coaching for people who do CrossFit, and then realized that actually like the part that he enjoyed was coaching people specifically with jump rope. So for anyone who's tried CrossFit, double unders, things that I'm absolutely terrible at, double unders and all that sort of basic skill set. And he's even taken it even further. If you follow Nate on Instagram, some of his the stuff that he does is insane. Okay, so he's turned that into something, into a business he's now scaling. And then here's an example from Francis, who basically did what I think a lot of people worry about. So he solved the problem that a lot of people worry about, which was that he worked with men and women, got results with both. So what he did was build and launch one funnel to one niche. So as you can see here through the process I'll take you through in a moment, he spent 100 quid, he made 5 sales of 195 and then scaled that business up, right? And now he shifted the niche a little bit. Okay, so he created another ad for the same challenge, but targeting a different sector, which is pretty cool. Second problem is how much to charge. So you want to work with this sort of person, and we're probably going to build out some kind of program for them, but how much do you actually charge for it? So the charge what you're worth, high ticket world everywhere at the moment, right? And a lot of people are trying to sell high ticket programs over the phone for 5,000 plus. Some of them even go higher than that. It's insane. And there is basically in this market, everything from totally free to unreasonably expensive. And if you go high price, there's very high expectation, very high time investment, very high refund risk. People waking up in the morning thinking, oh my God, what did I do? I can't believe I spent $5,000 on that fitness program, right? And you've got low price, which means you've got to sell a lot of people. You can't really justify coaching them because they've only paid. I mean, there's an example that I'm aware of someone that charges £5 a month. All you can realistically give someone for that price is the same as like an app access, right? No coaching, no help. I think what people really need to get results. So the way we made this decision, everyone thinks that we're just really anti high ticket for no reason. Right, the way we made this decision was I just ran the numbers, right? Boring accountant coming through that I just looked at it and I thought, well, which is better, right? Everyone says high ticket's better. Let's see if that's right. So take an example of 72,000 revenue. So it's about what I said we hit when we were leaving. Okay, so 72,000 annual revenue, leaving the finance world. So let's say you charge £1,000 for 72,000 annual revenue. You need to make 72 sales, obviously. Let's say you close, and you might be higher than this, but 15% is about standard. Okay, so let's say you're having to do a call to sell something of that price. You're having to speak to people. Let's say you close 15%. Okay, so you need to do 480 calls throughout the year to get your 72 sales of £1,000. Let's say you're pretty good with advertising. Okay, so you're going to struggle to get 480 calls by just posting on Instagram. Okay, unless you've got a huge audience. Even then, you're probably going to struggle. So you're going to have to run some ads. You're going to have to go through some sort of funnel to get calls regularly. All right, so you're spending £100 a call. That's a pretty good funnel. Okay, trust me, that's very hard to do. But let's say you manage. You need to spend 48 grand to get the 480 calls and the 72 sales. Okay, not accounting for the time spent on the phone. So net of ad spend, you make 24,000. That's before paying yourself and before paying profit on the taxation and before processing fees and all that sort of stuff. So as you can see, sounds great, right? But the hourly rate for that, when you consider that every single sale required quite a long time on the phone, and then every single person who pays £1,000 is expecting quite a bit of your time, the hourly rate is a little bit nauseating. Let's compare that to mid-ticket coaching, right? Which is why we promote what we promote. Okay, so let's say you charge £100 a month. This is reinforcing what I was saying earlier. Let's say on average people stay 6 months. Now that honestly is harsh. Typically it's longer than that, but let's say it's 6 months. I don't want to give like an unfair comparison. So that means average revenue or lifetime revenue per client is £600. It means you need to make 120 sales. If you build a sales funnel that converts at 5%, okay, so that's not incredibly high, and I'm going to show you how we do that in a moment. Sales funnel that converts at 5%, you need 2,400 leads. So you need a lot more people, right? You need a lot more people. However, all we're doing here is trying to get someone to go through something. So for us, we use a 14-day sequence. We're trying to get them to just opt in and go through free information. We're not trying to get them on the phone. Okay, we're not trying to actually speak to them. So it's cheaper, right? Way cheaper, in fact. You get leads for £3. Sound gone again, guys? Or can you hear me okay? How long did it drop out for when it went? Okay, cool. Which is it, guys? 5 seconds, 2 seconds. No, cool. Right, that shouldn't happen again. So you need, cool, awesome. So you need 2,400 leads, right? £3 a lead. So your ad spend's way lower. You need a lot more people, but your ad spend's way lower. We're trying to convert fewer of them into something that's easier. So the profit at the end of that is quite a bit higher, right? 64,800, and that's without hours on the phone. Okay, so the thing that's interesting about this is when you look at the two, when you look at like I'm going to charge £1,000 or £100, one of them is kind of this delayed gratification thing where yes, you're only charging a small amount on day one, but you're then incentivized to build out this thing that gets people to stay for a long period of time, right? It incentivizes a very high quality coaching experience. That's not sexy. That doesn't get testimonials for business coaches saying I made 10 grand in a week, right? But the high ticket thing is it's like Alex, one of the guys who works with us, our community manager, he came up with this phrase the other day that high ticket coaching is like the fat loss pill of the business world, right? Is that it's the big promise. It's the abs in 7 days promise. Sounds great, but when you run it for a long period of time, you start to see all of these kind of holes. Unless you've got like a huge sales team and you can spend loads of money on advertising, it has a lot of problems associated with it, right? So what is wrong with high ticket? Why do I think you shouldn't do it? It ignores the realities of the market, the fact that people can sign up with an app for £5.99, the fact that people can work with someone in person for £30, £40 an hour, right? It ignores the basics of supply and demand, that when there's a lot of supply, price usually drops, not rises. Okay, now a lot of people say you should charge what you're worth, and that sounds great, but the realities of it are, it doesn't tend to play out long term. Okay, it absolutely requires a sales call. You cannot sell something at that price without sales calls, which means you're doing roughly, it's not always 10 hours, but it can be. Okay, there's no financial return on investment or ROI with an offer like this. Okay, you're not saying if you buy this thing for £1,000, I will teach you something and you'll make £10,000. Okay, you can't say that. This is fitness coaching. So someone could spend £30 an hour with a personal trainer and receive the same results. which means you have to have this kind of high contact coaching time, this very bespoke thing that you have to really try and make out why it's so different. Okay. So it actually, I think it worsens the service overall. So I think you have to do one-to-one, which long term with a lot of clients, you'll eventually forget stuff, right? You're tired, you're hungover, you want to go on holiday, your clients suffer. It creates this up and down, feast and famine situation where you'll have good months and bad. And then the final one is the you're looking trim, or like you're looking lean test, right? Which is where someone goes out for dinner, they're sat with their friends, and all the friends go like, wow, you look amazing. Like, what have you been doing? Like, oh, I've been working with this online coach. Like, oh, wow, that sounds great. Who is it? Do you mind me asking? Yeah, it's this. Okay, right. I'm in. How much is it? It was $5,000. Oh, right. So you're not going to get referrals either. Whereas if it's £100 or $100 or whatever that translates into, suddenly people are like, well, actually, that's less than I'm paying for my personal trainer, right? Well, that's less than all these other things. So it ends up being something that people are proud to tell their friends about, right? So we recommend actually two-step pricing, just to slightly contradict what I just said. So specifically, we found selling £100 a month straight away, quite difficult to do. People bucket it with the same with their mortgage and their rent and car payments, insurance, and all that sort of stuff, right? So instead, we build this front-end program, this 6 to 12 week program. Ours is 6 weeks long. Some of our clients are built up to 16, 20 weeks long for very specific reasons, but generally it's between 150 and 300 quid. So it's the same kind of rate averaged out. Okay. So for £100 a month, it would be 150 for 6 weeks. And that's the thing that they buy at the end of the sales sequence. And then this leads into £100 to £200 a month recurring option. Okay. So this allows you can remain competitive. I'm not telling you to charge £2 a month. Okay, you can remain competitive, but you don't need to speak to people on the phone for this. Okay. And the focus is on the coaching, building the best coaching you can, not spending all your time on the phone selling. Imagine the coach who's spending however many it is, 480 hours a year selling on the phone versus the coach who's putting 480 hours a year into making their program better. Who do you think is going to be in a better position in 2 years' time, 3 years' time? Okay, so it incentivizes you to build the best coaching possible, which in turn expands your business. So just to combat the common misconception of like online clients stay a year, I think our record, it's technically one of Yusuf's one-to-one clients who actually left and then has renewed again this year, was 9 years. Okay, so 2 to 3 years is not uncommon, which, that's a lifetime, at these rates, that's a lifetime value of 3.5 to 7 grand, right? Which is not bad. And the reality is a client who stays because it's cheaper than the alternatives, they feel the service is better than what they're paying for. They like the community, they love the coaching, they're constantly getting results. They're actually worth more than what they pay. Okay, so yes, of course, they're worth the coaching fee, the revenue to the business, but typically we find someone who stays that long generates 1 to 2 referrals on average per person. They generate at least one before and after or testimonial photo. And long term, we found that those people are the best people to hire as client support, client management. They may even do it for free, right? People join your program. Someone's been in the program for 8 months or a year. A new person asks a question. The person who's been in for a year is desperate to help, right? Desperate to help. So that's just some of the benefits. So 2 examples of this. Tom, who's working the MMA niche with a business called Grapple Machine, he basically found, we had this situation the other day on a coaching call where he was trying to sell slightly higher than what we recommended. I'm not going to go into his exact pricing, slightly higher than what we recommended for his ongoing coaching. The trouble with his niche is to work in MMA or to be an MMA athlete. I don't know much about this, and you're about to find out that I don't. But basically, they need like 2 gym memberships. So a general fitness gym membership and then the MMA gym. And then they need the kit, the equipment, and the various costs that go with it. So the average outlay for these customers was already fairly high. And so Tom was surveying his audience, and basically they said, look, if you charge 10, 15 pounds a month less, I'm in. Found this price that's then allowed them to stay longer. So in some cases, you get lured in by charging more. Actually, if you charge slightly less, people end up staying longer. And this feeds back into build something that people want to stay in, build something that people want to stay in for years, rather than trying to maximize cash up front all the time. Neil's journey, he's benefiting from 70 online clients. So he basically built it to 70 and then stopped, right? And that's just one of the benefits of a recurring. When you're at that point, you don't need to think, oh God, I need to do 30 sales calls next month just to hit my financial targets. All right, so we know who we are targeting. We know how much to charge. How do we actually get them? Okay, so there's two, I guess there's two categories, or there's one really. Most people at this point are doing organic marketing. And by that, I simply mean posting on social media for free. Okay, so posting content on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Clubhouse, whatever's the latest thing, right? And it's loads of like busy stuff with no actual evidence of it working. So I will do this sometimes with a client comes on board and they'll show me all the organic stuff they're doing. And I'll say, show me the post that made this sale. And obviously you can't, right? I know it sounds like I'm being nasty, but it's to illustrate the point that maybe none of it worked. And actually the person was going to buy anyway. Maybe one of the 10 things you did worked, but there's no way of really segmenting and figuring out how. We're encouraged by a lot of the advice, kind of the Gary Vaynerchuk wave of information, that we should be staying really busy on social media. We should be posting every day. And if it's not working, it's because you need to like tweak your caption or tweak your call to action and basically grow your audience, engage with people, be really helpful, give out loads of content for free, push for engagement, send DMs. Outside of the fitness industry bubble, okay, this sort of advice just doesn't hold any water, right? So no business in the world that's huge or big even is doing well because the CEO is good on Instagram. Like Amazon didn't have a great year in 2020 because Jeff Bezos downloaded and got really good at TikTok, right? That's not how real businesses really function. They have a marketing strategy, a marketing budget, some kind of like, when I pull this lever, I get more customers. All right. The second problem that we see is the sales call thing, right? Or discovery calls, as it's typically referred to as, right? So business coaches teach what work for business coaching typically. All right. Now, just to address something quickly here, when someone wants to join Propane Business, we do have a phone call with them. All right. It is not, some of you may have even been on one of them. It is not a sales call, right? It is not one of us trying to make you cry, trying to dig into your relationships and make you uncomfortable to then force you to make a decision, right? It is a diagnostic tool for us. Of the people that apply to Propane Business, generally speaking, around 1 in 3 people we cannot help. By that, I mean, they literally would not benefit from the program, okay? In the fitness side of things, if someone gets to the point where they're actually getting in touch with us and considering it, they don't really ever have that problem, right? Unless someone's got a major injury or there's something going on that means we can't coach them, we don't really get to that point, right? So the one time I think something like this does work is if there's something about what you're doing that there is an actual reason why you need to speak to someone before they buy to make sure that you can actually work with them. I've never worked with a fitness coach. There's one example, and he was doing more kind of habit management than specific typical fitness coaching. But there's one example I can think of where that was required. Everybody else we've ever worked with does not needed or has not needed sales calls. And we've been able to take sales calls out of the business and get higher conversion rates using a different process. Okay, so business coaches teach what works for business coaching. It works for business coaching because it is a business to business transaction, right? It is, generally speaking, it is a business buying from a business. There's a lot to talk about. It's not, business is not just calories and progressive overload. Okay, so I kind of see it as it's a symptom, right? Because if what is being taught is one-to-one coaching, then you need to charge high prices because you can't work with 50 people if you're doing one-to-one. So you need to up your prices to hit your revenue goals. And if you're going to up your prices to hit your revenue goals, then you have to do sales calls. So it's kind of a symptom of itself. And the way we look at it is like, it's not 1990. People, a consumer is not used to buying something over the phone. They're used to buying something on their phone in an ad break, right? They're used to buying something, like think of the Amazon purchase experience. You don't have to ring the person and ask if they've got any in stock. And then, so it's like this weird kind of pushy thing that alienates people and they're not really sure why it's happening. Okay, so on top of all of that, typically the people we work with, I know, again, it's different now, but at least as of the time of me presenting this, but generally the people we work with are busy personal trainers. They're already short on time. The last thing they want is 10 hours of sales calls a week, okay? So, and final thing, excuse me, online and offline, when it comes to actually acquiring a client, very different, okay? So online, you can't get away with the stuff that would work offline. And I suppose where sales calls, the reason they're justified is it's like a free session you would give in a gym, right? The trouble is in a gym is full of people who are already paying to be there in the first place. They already know they've got this goal. They're already doing something towards the goal. And you've got personal trainer, I'm here to help, or something like that on your back. You are the logical next step to get help if somebody wants it. Online, you're just a weirdo on their newsfeed that they've never heard of before, right? And what the stranger's thinking is like, who are you? Why should I listen to this? Is this person trying to scam me? What the hell's online coaching? Does this even work? And maybe even like, well, it won't work for me. I'm different because of this stuff. I've got this going on. They don't understand, right? So we have to approach it differently. So this kind of problem is never going to be solved. Like this, the situation these people are in is never going to be solved by a clever infographic or an Instagram reel or a TikTok video or a video just saying it's a calorie deficit with text at the bottom and the top, right? Instead, what we need is some way to take a stranger who has no idea who we are to the point of, actually, you know what? Yes, I think this might be the solution for me. So we teach a 14-day sales system, 14-day challenge, 14-day whatever, right? It's the way we arrived at it was we analyzed all of our opt-ins over a 1-year period. Okay, so when somebody entered their information into PropaneFitness in one of the ways they can opt in, and the average time, the people who made a decision within the first 90 days, the average time it took them to make that purchase decision was 14 days. Okay, so what we realized was after all these opt-ins was that a 14-day window was about optimum. Obviously, there are some exceptions, but most people were 14 days, there or thereabouts, to make a buying decision. Now, it's no coincidence that when you sign up for ClickFunnels or ActiveCampaign or lots of other things, it comes with a 14-day trial. Okay, shock. Who's to think that kind of big businesses are basing things on like data that you arrive at yourself, right? So 14 days we found is about right when it comes to taking someone who doesn't know who we are and asking them for money. So during that time, what this is not, and we see so people will come and say, I ran a challenge, I ran a 14-day thing and it didn't work at all. And I don't know why. Generally, that is because it's 14 days of tips and information that fail the Google test. In other words, if a day of your challenge is you need to drink more water because hydration is good for fat loss, etc. If I were to Google water and fat loss and I would find the same information on Google, I'm not really learning anything, right? Instead, in the 14 days, what we do is we look at what is this person actually thinking? What is stopping them from making a buying decision? How do we build something around that? I'm not going to, this needs to be bespoke for every business we work with. Everyone's 14-day challenge looks totally different. So I can't go into more details than that. But here's an overview of it. You've probably seen this before if any of you have seen any of our webinars or training before. Basically, this is the kind of the throughput from Facebook ad, landing page, 14-day challenge. It's a yes or a no. So green is they buy, red is they don't. If they do buy, it's that 6-week program I mentioned. Sometimes it's discounted, but generally it's 150 or 147. And after that, it's either £97 a month, or they can do one-to-one if they want. We don't really push that at all at the moment. There are things you can sell them during that are extra. So like mugs, t-shirts, extra programs, extra add-ons, extra one-to-one calls if they want it. If they say no during the 14-day challenge, which is most people, 95% of people, in fact, then we put them through a 90-day follow-up sequence and through retargeting. Okay, so that's where we add in things like podcast. We send them to a post Yusuf did on Instagram. We send them to a YouTube video. Either we try and get them to buy the thing that they said no to straight away, or if not, try and sell them something a little bit cheaper. So here's where having a product suite comes in. So having ebooks, we've recently added, and kind of our focus at the moment is a members portal, a cheaper price thing that doesn't include any coaching. This is how kind of the ecosystem fits together. So in terms of like what we teach people to do, this is it, right? But everybody sees this and goes, ebooks, I want ebooks, right? Ebooks are only relevant because the 14-day challenge converts, right? The people who buy the ebooks, that's free for us, basically. It's a complete profit because we paid, the ads were paid for by the people in the 14-day challenge who bought, okay? So the real benefit of all of this, everyone talks about marketing. No one really mentions this. The real benefit of all of this is we've all had the guilt when it gets to like the end of the day and you think, oh, I've not posted on Instagram very much today. Or you go on holiday and you decide to have a week off. Whenever we next get to have a holiday, you decide to have a week off and you don't post on Instagram, right? And you feel guilty that you've not marketed your business. The real benefit of having something like this run with advertising is that guilt vanishes. Okay, because when you see opt-ins coming in every day anyway, you realize how insignificant all of that is, especially when you compare the numbers. Here's 2 examples of this. Perry came to us working in a different industry. She was a personal trainer, but had left the fitness industry, working in something totally different. She built a 14-day sequence in the way that we advise, helped her make it bespoke to her audience. And she's now basically been able to leave a 9 to 5 and move into online coaching, which is cool. All with a 14-day challenge that converted. Rob's 14-day challenge converted 17% of customers from leads. So leads into customers. And he just started doing this in his evenings and his weekends. This point that I was saying that like at some point it has to get to this level where there's enough volume to justify putting your time into it. His time was focused on building this thing, okay? Building the 14-day sequence to allow this to work. Nick's sales funnel, I think he currently holds the record, actually, of 26% of the people joining the 14-day challenge bought from him at the end of it, and he's now scaling it with advertising. Problem 4, once you've got it to this point, how do you actually deliver service, right? You've got these people who want to work with you, they've bought from you, how are you going to coach them? So the trap that we see with this is one-to-one coaching. So most coaches are offering like a one-to-one bespoke programming, done via an app, weekly programming, delivered, custom built every time, check-ins daily or weekly calls, and a lot of weekends and spare time, especially as someone who's working offline at the moment, is devoted to this stuff, right? This is great for the first couple of people you work with because they get a great experience. But as soon as you have, generally we've seen 20 is the absolute, like devoting your entire life to this. Past that, it really starts to break. And by that, I mean, while it sounds terrible, like you'll get an email and you'll have forgot what you said to the client the previous week. Okay. Especially if 2 clients have the same name, same first name, can be a nightmare. So basically traditional one-to-one online coaching is still just swapping time for money, right? The problems that you encounter are not as an offline coach, waking up early and finishing late and having to sell your time in a specific location to earn your money. Online coaching done like this has the same thing, okay? So if you have 30 clients and you get one more client, they have to wait for the 31st email, right? Or the 31st reply before they hear from you, if it's just one-for-one. Live classes and Zoom classes are a great stopgap to kind of fill the space that's been created by suddenly I can't get to the gym. However, long term, if we scale that, we throw more people into that model, how many Zoom classes can you fit into a week? What happens when those clients can go back to the gym? All that sort of stuff. So what we did was we basically got PropaneFitness to the point where we were coaching 30 clients each. We didn't use an app or anything like that. We used our personal email accounts, and it was done in spare time. Okay, so we first tried outsourcing. So we brought on another coach, twice actually, which went terribly. I'm not going to go into that. Then we tried selling them things like ebooks instead. So we tried doing 2 ebook launches. We tried doing a paid webinar launch. Neither of those things worked. And basically, we just kept running up against this problem of if we want the revenue to double, we are going to have to double our hours. There's no other way that we can see that changing. So the thing I mentioned earlier of this like results via a recipe, it's the same thing. You look at bigger companies, look at huge brands. What are they doing? The CEO of Starbucks isn't making every cappuccino. The founder of McDonald's isn't making every burger. Okay, if anyone's seen the film called The Founder, you maybe see where this has come from, or read a book called The E-Myth. So we realized that our email replies to people when they were asking the same questions in the first week, when they were largely following similar programs, when they were coming up with similar obstacles in the journey with us, were like so many of these things, when you take a step back, it's like a formula. The first week for people, almost always the same. The second week, same sorts of questions come out. The advice, the guidance, the explanation, all ended up being similar. The book's called The E-Myth, or The E-Myth Revisited, Martin. The film's called The Founder. It's about Ray Kroc, who franchised McDonald's. So all of this just relied on us to basically send it manually. So if the first week for 30 clients ends up looking pretty similar, the only thing stopping it from happening automatically was the fact that we had decided it needed to be done by hand, right? So this is kind of a diagram of what we work towards, right? So, I mean, there's a lot going on here, but just to give you an example, someone buys the onboarding process can be completely automated. There is no reason why someone cannot be sent everything that they need, filling in PAR-Qs, signing forms, giving us their basic information, all automated. That means if someone for us buys in Australia, the other side of the world, or vice versa, if you're in Australia, they can do that without waiting for us to wake up in the morning, okay? Then we do typically have a phone call with them. That is, so basically the idea behind this diagram is the red parts are the only things that require us to do something manually, right? Everything else is largely managed one-to-many. So the one-to-one phone call, we decide what programming bucket they go in and the variation of the programming, and then that's then automated. They're managed via a group for the training, where we do triage one-to-one support. Basically, people who are struggling get more of our time than people who aren't struggling. Weekly modules, e-learning documents and downloads is the bulk of the material that they get during the time that they're working with us. And we do a weekly live Q&A that goes out to everybody. So the principle is simple. Okay, so you can, I realize everyone kind of wants to look at the details, but this is the principle. So a negative flywheel and a positive flywheel is something that was basically popularized by Jeff Bezos at Amazon. I think it's the third time I've mentioned him, right? Negative flywheel or positive flywheel. So a negative flywheel is something that gets worse as it gets busier, gets worse as you put more people through it. So if we're doing one-to-one coaching and sales calls, and we try to grow that business, what happens is we do more sales calls, so we have less time for coaching, which means that we get more people in the program, but we still have less time for coaching. So we have more clients requiring one-to-one support and help. Ultimately, we then have less time for sales calls because we're having to deal with the people that we bought. Our coaching quality declines. Clients start leaving, clients start refunding, and we have to attempt to scale again, right? So the whole thing is kind of designed to be limited at a certain volume. Contrast that to group coaching. So what I just gave you a diagram of before and the 14-day challenge. We attempt to scale that. Okay, so we get more members in the 14-day challenge, which means we get more feedback about the challenge, which means we can tweak it and change it. We're running the same thing over and over again. We don't have to work any more hours though. There can be 1,000 people in the 14-day challenge or 100 people in the 14-day challenge. No more hours of work directly. Okay, we get more signups going through the group system. Most of it's automated. We get more questions. We have to write more programs. We have to build more resources. We get more people attending the Q&As. But that means we can add resources to the program. We can add more programs to the program library. People who've been in the program for 6 months start to help people who've been in the program for 6 days. And the resources facilitate future scale. Okay, so the more people who go through the program, the better the program becomes. The better the program becomes, the fewer questions we get asked, the fewer hours we have to spend manually answering questions. Because once we've answered it once, we don't need to answer it again. And I've shared this photo before. It's basically the day that we had this, like, brings a tear to your eye, to be honest, moment where you realize, like, wow, this person has got results because they've been through the thing that we built, right? They've been through the thing and got results from the thing that we created. It's not just our time. And this was Heather basically sending us a thank you. One of the systems we had was that we sent her a book on her birthday. And this is her sharing her, like, weight loss and her results, and saying thank you for the present we sent her. So that's pretty cool. It's kind of one of those realizations where, you know, it's like PropaneFitness and the program has given Heather the result that she has, rather than kind of hours of our time, which was awesome. How do you build this then, right? How do you sat without any of this? How do you actually go about building it? Well, the coach's dilemma, if we're working with someone who's 2 years behind us, how do we remember what it's like to not know what we know? If you're sat there now with, like, additional nutrition courses under your belt and extra certifications and various things, how do you unknow that, right? I know that's not a real phrase, but how do you forget that information? Very, very difficult to do, right? And the examples we give is like, or the main example is when people joined the Propane protocol the first time we made it, people were asking questions like, which foods do I eat which foods have protein in them? And we're like, what? Like, what? I can't believe that's a question, right? But that's what our clients wanted. And if we just built the program on what Yusuf and I wanted to talk about, and if all the program was like advanced RPE adjusted programming and designed for something we were interested in, it would have been way over the top for our clients. And ultimately, it would have been a bad program. Okay. So that's kind of the first problem. And the second problem is someone who goes away and builds their program for 6 months. And you see them post on social media and say, after 6 months of work, I'm proud to announce that my program is finally finished, and then no one cares, right? So all the coaches that we help basically get paid by interested clients who understand what they're buying before the program even exists, right? And they're able to make a market-leading program in the process through this sequence of things. Okay, so they join PropaneFitness, they start working with us. We set to work, we discuss with them, what is your client, what is the result, what are the problems, let's build out and map out a 14-day challenge. It's the first thing. We get people in it, we launch it, and we get 20 to 50 people into it at minimum using free methods. I'm not going to go into that now, but that's without advertising, using free methods. We sell tester spaces at 50% off or whatever price that feels comfortable, bearing in mind only the very shell of the program exists at this point in the kind of the basic support systems. We then build a 8-week or 6-week or 12-week program with those testers. Bear in mind, everyone's just paid to be in it. Now they're helping us make it. They help us produce the thing that we're then going to ultimately sell for even more. We then relaunch the 14-day challenge with advertising, either using the profits that you got from the first round or your own money. It's up to you, right? But the point is, the money that we're putting into ads came from the business. And then the ads that we're spending money on are going into a 14-day sequence that we've already tested has worked, right? This is how we launch everything that we do. So Propane Business was built like this. The Propane Protocol was built like this. Every ebook or anything we've ever produced was pre-sold, was sold as a tester. Not because it's like, oh, it's exciting to sell something that doesn't exist. It's because the most fundamental way to help someone is ask them what they would like and make that to the best of your ability, okay? And the best way to do that is to pre-sell a program, okay? This is Charlotte's example of this. She had 13 people sign up for her 6-week program before it existed. Just scaled it with advertising. Bobby and Ryan implemented the same thing. They were able to improve the quality of their service for their clients while coaching more people, which is pretty cool. And then Beck was doing completely one-to-one coaching, now does all group-based coaching. And instead of doing like swipe ups and DMs and Instagram stuff, fills in with a 14-day challenge. And her first, actually, she might hold the record actually, but her first organic challenge converted at 26%. Now she's filling it with advertising. Final thing, then I'll let you all go, is basically you get a handful of clients, you get it to work for the first time. How do you scale something like this? If you can't rely on word of mouth and referrals like an offline coach would do, how do you get something like this to scale? The problem that people experience is they get their online business into no man's land. And what I mean by that is you've got clients, right? You've not got nothing. You've got some clients. You kind of feel like, well, I can't just leave this because there are people paying me, but it's not quite doing enough to justify leaping into it full time. So it's always going to be limited by that, okay? So when starting online, so many coaches get stuck in this. They post on social media to the same people every day, the same like 2,000-3,000 people in the audience. The same people see it all the time. And even if you're getting the people who are ready to buy, you're not adding to your audience fast enough to keep that running as a sustainable strategy. So that then leads people to say, well, I'm going to boost a post, right? I'm going to spend money on ads, right? And so many people we speak to have tried advertising and lost money, almost all of the money, right? Ads get clicks and attention, but they aren't magical. The ads that we teach people to run would not work if the 14-day challenge didn't work, okay? So there's also this problem. I wrote an email about this the other day where people think that ads are the answer. So they hire an agency, they hire like some kind of ads agency and pay a retainer to run ads for them without a proven sales sequence underneath it, okay? Which, yes, it may be able to help. And we do know people who've had some good results with that sort of thing. But if you're pouring petrol onto something that doesn't have a flame, it's not going to start a fire, okay? You need to have something that's working before you throw more people into it. Ads will only work when the experience after the click is already generating a sale. And this is really the real power of the 14-day challenge. It's not just getting people in to go through the program and help build your program with you. Once the 14-day challenge is built and it's converting, you don't need to make it again. You already know that it works. We then just figure out, well, who's the person this 14-day challenge was built for, right? How do we go out onto Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Google, YouTube, and find those people, right? That's when the boulder starts rolling. And this is basically what that looks like. Okay, so this is an example of, let's say we get £1.50 clicks. We get £3 leads. Our 14-day challenge converts at 4% at a 147 price point, and 75% of those people stay on £97 a month. Okay, so here's that running through. Let's say we spend £1,000 in ads, 333 leads, 13 sales, and we spent £1,000 in ads. So we made a little bit of money on the front end. We made £261 on the front end. Nothing to write home about, okay? But then 9 people get rebilled and decide to stay with us. Okay, 9 of the 13 decide to stay at the end of the 6 weeks. So now we have 9 clients at £873 a month. Then we take some of the profit and we put it back into advertising. Okay, so now we spend £2,314 in advertising. We get more leads, we make more front-end sales, and we've now got the 31 program sales on top of the 9 recurring. Percentage of those people stay. Now we have 32 clients at £3,104 a month. And it's this sort of process, this sort of conveyor belt system, because of all these things that I've spoken about this evening, because of how all these things fit together, that allows the kind of predictability that you see here to be able to spend whatever it was for that month, $7,000 on advertising. Okay, here's some example of clients who are employing this. TJ runs a business called Rugby Muscle. If there are any rugby fans listening, you may have heard of him. But he's been using that. He already had an online business when he came to us. He wasn't new, but he didn't have any of this. Okay, he still didn't have something that he could reliably pull a lever, generate leads, and generate sales. So he just gained 14 new clients with this system the first time he launched it. Bodhi applied the same thing to a facility, made $4,000 in the first 2 weeks of working with us. Colin also applied the same thing to an online version of his facility that was already in existence, and now converts 83% of applications for his program. Carl, Martin knows Colin, that's awesome. Carl, who's kind of the reason I mentioned Carl so many times is Carl is the guy who last year, was able to sell swimming coaching while pools were closed. I suggested that he didn't try and do it. He did it, he tried it, and it worked. So he had people in their living rooms doing swimming practice lying down on the ground. But Carl has scaled this up to 229 customers with a 14-day challenge. And he's been doing it for quite some time. It's going awesome. It's great to see him progress. And then just a quick mention, this is Alex, our community manager, interviewing Carl. He would never say anything positive about himself because he's very modest, but he's a copywriting expert. He's the brains behind that content and that podcast. Have any of you seen that? He's got an Ivy League master's degree in writing, and he helped me make every single one of these slides. So as a quick mention, quick not of the hat to Alex. So, all right, that is basically the content for this evening, guys. Hopefully it has helped you. And I know what you think I'm probably going to say at this point. There's nothing to sell you. There's basically just an opportunity to potentially work with us if this has been helpful. So as you know, you could do it on your own. Hopefully I've spoken about this enough for you to at least have a crack at it on your own. If not, you can work with us. And here's how. So option one, on your own. Again, I'm going to do this without being salesy. Okay. So I don't have a magic wand to wave. I cannot magically get you clients overnight. Okay. Honestly, you can do it on your own, and you probably will eventually get there on your own. Okay. That is the thing that no one else will tell you. But I do want to be real about this. Okay. And I know this sounds like a sales pitch. We got some results on our own through a lot of frustration. As I said, it took us 8 years. Okay. It took us years to get traction. We have spent over 300 grand on just ads. Most of the products we tried to launch have failed. Most of the marketing we did has failed. You will be mistakes, and there will be plenty of laptop off the wall moments, or if you have a business partner, laptop off business partner moments. So, like it's not an impossible thing to figure out by yourself. But the reality is, just like what you tell your clients who are thinking about figuring out fitness on their own, if you've been doing it for 4, 5, 10 years, you probably know a thing or two that will help speed up that journey. I know that people say this all the time, and I didn't believe them, but it is categorically cheaper to get help than do it on your own. Doesn't mean you can't do it on your own, but it is not the cheap option. Okay, it just seems like it is. With our help, at this point, like I suppose what we're teaching, and hopefully this has come across at least in part, that kind of what we do, the way we teach it, the process we teach, the funnel we teach, the number of testimonials and results that we have, it's down to both an art and a science. And I say that because yes, there's you are dealing with people, you are helping people. It is a business that is solving a problem for real humans on the other side of a screen. However, that doesn't mean that there is not a science and a numerical aspect to it, and you need to make the numbers and economics of something like this work. Realistically, we will help you get results way faster. We typically see results within the first few weeks of working with us, and you will only be spending time and effort on the things that we have tested ourselves. So anybody we work with, we have cut the fluff right out, and we basically only focus on the things that are fundamentally built to generate numbers that ultimately benefit you, like revenue, clients, client retention, percentage conversion, etc. And basically, you just benefit from all the stupid stuff that me and Yusuf have done, to be honest. So you get to model end-to-end the business model that we still use, that I've been through this evening, and that our clients have been through and got results with, and that our business clients are building themselves and are living off full-time, teaching people to swim without pools in some cases. So this is roughly the timeline of the program, what you could expect in the first 5 weeks if you did decide to jump on board. Week 1 is basically all spent kind of sitting with you and figuring out, okay, if you're going to work with this sort of person, what is everything else going to have to look like? What is your 14-day challenge going to look like? What's your business going to look like? What's the program going to look like? Here's how all the systems fit together. Here's some stuff to do. Unfortunately, at that point, there's then some work to do, sadly. Week 2, week 3, it's all about getting your 14-day challenge out there. Week 4, typically we see the first sales come into the program, and we then begin the most exciting point, which is the path to scale. So the goals that we set, you may have set this evening, the goal is, let's say, 30 clients, and you get 10 from your first 14-day challenge. It's like, right, now we're going to reuse the 14 days, and we're going to scale it up with advertising to get the remaining 20, okay? And that's where kind of the maths comes in as well. So we open up the tap and begin really scaling with ads. That's obviously, for lots of reasons, that's the part I enjoy the most. If this sounds like you, if this has resonated with you, if this has been interesting, if you think I'd like to work with these guys, all you got to do is basically go to the following link over the next 4 days, 4 working days. Not that it matters because it's not a weekend, but over the next 4 working days, so basically for the rest of this week, and we've opened up some appointments for an informal chat. It'll either be with me or with Alex, the community manager, basically just to see if we can help. And I do mean informal chat, okay? If we can't help you, we'll make some recommendations of resources and things that we would recommend instead. If we can, we'll talk about things more formally. Quick point on what the call is and isn't. I have personally been on my fair share of pretty nasty, pretty high pressured sales calls. This is not that. We are very against that. Basically, we know pretty quickly, even just from the application form we fill in, whether or not you'll be someone that we can help or not. Kind of like of all the people who've been through the program, we've got a lot of data on that. We know who gets the best results. We'll just be honest. We'll discuss your business and your business plans, your goals for online. So if you do book a call and you'd like to discuss something specific, we think something specific is relevant, bring that with you to the discussion. We'll explain how our program works, how it would work for you, what it would look like for you, and then basically let you ask questions. I know this sort of thing's a big decision. If you do decide to even entertain the discussion, you'll probably have a lot of questions for us. So we open up plenty of time for that. And if you do decide not to work with us, no hard feelings, promise. Yusuf might be upset, but I won't be. So basically, all you have to do, if you would like to do this, or if you'd like to at least entertain the initial part of the discussion to see if we can help, is go to this link here. And that is now in the chat. It's either propanefitness.com/online coach start, or the link is there in the chat for anyone who would like it. Who has a question? Martin, yeah, of course. So in terms of, I probably should have explained that. I'd love to know the answer to that, by the way, Alex. I suppose what we assume, the only thing we assume when someone joins the program, so there's no requirements for like a specific place you need to be in your business. You don't need a website. You don't need to know who your online client would be or anything like that, to be honest. In fact, in some cases, we find if there's someone's like a blank slate, it kind of helps. The only thing that we assume is that if we help you get clients, you have the skill set to be able to help the clients, right? So I guess the problem with a lot of the kind of make money online stuff is it's just like, oh, just do this thing, just launch this funnel and people buy from you. Like there is a service being offered. So as long as you feel comfortable, which it sounds like you are, offering a service, that when someone buys from you, you're like, yeah, I have the expertise to help people, then we can help you with the rest. Okay, the rest of the stuff can be taught. Tommy, I'm not sure what you mean. Do you mean, are people in Propane Business at different, like, do we have different intakes for Propane Business? Is that what you mean? Your tongue. No problem, Adam. Sean, I certainly see why you think that. We have plenty of people doing stuff in that niche right now. So it is possible. I would encourage you to think more about the mindset of the person buying than having to teach them a specific skill, right? So like the gyms are closed. If you're dealing with strength training clients, those strength training clients presumably still have goals, right? That still exist. So how can you help them in that situation? Hey, Leon. It's a great question. Um, so I don't think I wouldn't say that we've hit a ceiling with it. I think it's more that Yusuf and I changed how we wanted to run things. So a big focus in the fitness business right now. So we're at the point, and I guess like some of this is don't copy what we are doing right now because it's not right for the start of the business. But we're at the point where the fitness business has so much traffic and so many opt-ins that it kind of makes sense to try and offer a full suite of things. And the area of the business that we were really weak on and still are is the kind of the lower price stuff. So I mentioned there, like we're building out and we're really trying to focus on building the lower price stuff. So so the Propane protocol is being turned into a members portal. We have cheaper ebooks and things like that. We still do one-to-one coaching. There's slightly less of an emphasis on the group stuff at the moment. But it's not so much. I think the ceiling was more in terms of like our headspace for doing it and what we wanted out of it. So we just shifted the emphasis slightly. In terms of the organic nature of offering the business stuff, the only reason we've been able to do that, to be honest, is team. So guys like Alex, we basically have every every aspect of the business that doesn't require me and Yusuf. We tried to either automate or outsource, and that opened up a lot of time. So it opened up time to create Propane Business. It opened up time to do the coaching side of it. All right, everyone. Thanks for all the questions. I can see for those of you who have already booked. Cool. So for those of you who've just booked a call, if you're still on, basically you'll just be getting confirmation over email. We'll obviously chat to you at the time that you've booked. Look forward to speaking to you if it's with me or you'll be chatting with Alex. If you have any questions between now and then, drop me a message, let me know. But yeah, everyone, thank you for spending your evening listening to me. Hopefully it's been helpful. And I look forward, for those of you who are booked or yet to book, I'll chat to you soon.